If you need the reading read aloud to you, this is it. It's for the earliest Americans. Building background. The first settlers in the Americas probably came in small groups from Asia over thousands of years. Over time, they moved into nearly every region of North and South America. They encountered many different types of land and climate. Migration to the Americas. Many scientists believe that people first arrived in North America during the last ice age. At the start of the ice age, Earth's climate grew colder. Large amounts of water froze into huge, moving ice sheets called glaciers. As a result, ocean levels dropped more than 300 feet lower than they are today. When the water level fell, a land bridge appeared between northeastern Asia and present-day Alaska. Geographers call this the Bering Land Bridge. Although no one knows exactly when or how people crossed into North America, evidence suggests that people called Paleo-Indians crossed this bridge into Alaska between 38,000 and 10,000 BC. This migration, or movement of people or animals from one region to another, took place over a long period of time. The Paleo-Indians are thought to have traveled into present-day Canada, the United States, and Mexico in search of animals to hunt. Over time, their descendants went as far as the tip of South America. Paleo-Indians were hunter-gatherers who lived by hunting animals and gathering wild plants. When the Ice Age ended about 8,000 BC, Earth's climate changed. Rising temperatures melted glaciers. The oceans rose, covering the Bering Land Bridge with water. As late as 1000 BC, people continued to come to North America in small boats. The warmer climate at the end of the Ice Age created many new environments, or climates and landscapes that surround living things. Short grasses replaced the taller grasses that had fed giant animals such as the mammoth. Large herds of smaller animals such as buffalo and deer ate the new short grasses. Paleo-Indians adapted to the changes by hunting these animals. Different environments influence the development of Native American societies, groups that share a culture. Culture is a group set of common values and traditions. These include language, government, family relationships, and other things like religion. Like all societies, Native American groups changed over time. They learned to domesticate or breed wild plants and animals. Maize, or corn, was one of the most important crops in the Americas. Early farming societies began in Mesoamerica, or Central America, and South America. And then you see this page has a map that shows migrations of early peoples. This is coming from the edge of Asia. There was a Bering Land Bridge into Alaska, what's now Canada, what's now the United States, Mexico, and further down. In the Ice Age, there were large animals like mammoths. And then it shows you a picture of kernels of corn or maize. And then here it shows a picture of a Mayan pyramid in what's present-day Guatemala, or Central America. And here's where your questions begin. Mesoamerican and North American societies. Some of the earliest American civilizations developed in Mesoamerica, also called Central America. The Olmec Society was one of the first. Mesoamerica and South America. The Olmec Society developed along the Mexican Gulf Coast between about 1200 and 400 BC. Olmec priests created complex number and calendar systems. They also developed a method of writing using glyphs or symbols that represent ideas. The Maya civilization thrived in southeastern Mesoamerica from about AD 300 to 900. The Maya built large stone temples, palaces, and bridges. They created calendars and studied mathematics and astronomy, or the stars. About AD 1200, Aztec invaders came south and occupied the central valley of what is now Mexico. At the same time, the Inca of South America created their own civilization in the Andes Mountains. Eventually, the Inca Empire stretched from present-day Ecuador to central Chile. North American societies. Although less populated than South America and Mesoamerica, North America had several farming cultures. One of these, the Anasazi, lived in the Four Corners region where present-day Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico and Utah meet. The Hopewell, another farming culture, lived along the Mississippi, Ohio, and lower Missouri River valleys. They supported their large populations with agriculture and trade. They built large burial mounds to honor their dead. The Mississippians lived along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. They too farmed, traded, and built large burial mounds. Cultures in North America. Researchers use culture areas, or the geographic locations that influence societies, to help them describe ancient Native American peoples. North America is divided into several culture areas. And on the slideshow, we actually tried to show you a map of these different cultural areas. It comes up later in the region. Based off of the region that people are living in, the idea is that their lifestyles would have been different, their cultures would have been different because of things like their geography and the weather, or over time, meaning climate. Far north. The far north of North America is divided into the Arctic and subarctic culture areas. Both regions have long, cold winters and short summers. Few plants grow in the Arctic because the ground is always frozen beneath a thin top layer of soil. The Inuit peoples adapted to these harsh conditions in present-day northern Alaska and Canada. The Aleut lived in western Alaska. The two groups shared many cultural features, including language. Both survived by fishing and by hunting large mammals. They also depended on dogs for many tasks, such as hunting and pulling sleds. South of the Arctic lies the subarctic, home to groups such as the Daghrib and the Montagnais people. While following the seasonal migrations of the deer, they lived in temporary shelters made of animal skins. At other times, they lived in villages made up of log houses. And this is a map showing different cultural areas or regions. Pacific Coast. Unlike the far north, the Pacific Coast had a mild climate. The area had a rich supply of game, animals, sea life, and wild plants. These resources allowed large populations to develop without the need for farming. People in the Northwest, like the Kwakiutl and the Chinook, built wooden houses and carved images of totems, which are ancestors or animal spirits, on tall wooden poles. People showed their wealth and earned social standing by holding special events called potlatches. At these gatherings, hosts gave away most of their belongings to gain respect from people. California. Farther south along the coast was the California region. Native Americans living in this area had many food sources available year-round, so farming was not necessary. One major plant food was acorns, which were ground into a flour. People in the California region also fished and hunted deer and other game. Most Native Americans here lived in isolated groups of families. Each of these groups had a small population of only 50 to 300 people. Among these Native American groups, including the Hupa, Miwok, and Yokuts, more than 100 different languages were spoken in California. The West and the Southwest. The West and the Southwest of present-day United States receive less rain than the Pacific Coast and California regions did. To survive, Native Americans fished, hunted, and gathered plants. Groups in the West, which is divided into the Great Basin and the Plateau regions, and the Southwest, including the Modoc and the Nez Perce. Native Americans of the West adapted to drier climate by gathering seeds, digging roots, and trapping small animals for food. Most groups in this region, including the Paiute, Shoshone, and Ute, spoke the same language. Native Americans of the Southwest also adapted to a dry climate. Southwestern culture groups included the Apache, Navajo, and Pueblo. The Pueblo Native Americans irrigated their land to grow crops. Pueblo religion focused on two key areas of Pueblo life: rain and maize, or corn. The Apache hunted game and raided the villages of the Pueblo and others. The Great Plains. The huge Great Plains region stretches south from Canada into Texas. This culture area is bordered by the Mississippi Valley on the east and the Rocky Mountains on the west. The plains were mainly grassland on which millions of buffalo and other game grazed in herds. Groups like the Mandan and the Pawnee grew beans, maize, and squash. Like some other Native American groups, Pawnee society was matrilineal. This means that people trace their ancestry through their mothers, not their fathers. People on the southern plains hunted buffalo on foot and gathered berries, nuts, and vegetables. The Arapaho, Blackfoot, and Comanche lived on the borders of the plains. Hunters from these groups killed buffalo by chasing the animals over steep cliffs, driving them into corrals, or trapping them with a ring of fire. The East. Eastern North America was rich in sources for food and shelter. Most southeastern groups, including the Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole, lived in farming villages governed by village councils. The Algonquian and Iroquois people were the two main groups of the Northeast. Algonquian peoples, whose territory extended to the far north region, survived by hunting and gathering plants. Those in the south farmed, hunted, gathered plants, and fished. To the east of the Algonquian lived the Iroquois. The Iroquois were farmers, hunters, and traders. They lived in long houses or rectangular homes made from logs and bark that housed 8 to 10 families. The Iroquois also developed the Iroquois League. This political confederation was established by the Cayuga, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, and Seneca nations. The League waged war against and made peace with non-Iroquois peoples. Its goal was to strengthen the alliance or the union against any invasion from other tribes. Women selected the male members of the League Council. Women of the tribes could overrule council decisions and could remove council members. The League helped the Iroquois become one of the most powerful peoples in North America. Summary and preview. In this section, you learned about the first peoples in North America and South America. In the next lessons, you're going to be learning about European exploration that led to the discovery by Europeans of the Americas, which Native Americans were already living on.